Where we're sitting now, in this relatively small part of America, is the epicenter through which the end of humanity as we know it is being orchestrated. Up to this point, human perception has been controlled by controlling as much as they possibly could through religion, through media control, by controlling the information that people receive from which they form perceptions. Humanity has been manipulated to become clever in the sense of intellect, clever enough to build its own technological prison, but not wise enough to see that that's what it's doing. What we call today fantastic technological progress, I'm not saying there's not some good things about it, but what it is in its totality, in its base form, is a prison for the human mind. People never ask this question. What is AI? This AI mind control, the assimilation, is unfolding before our eyes if we only see the outcome and therefore the steps towards it. If you're going to have people attached to technology, their brains attached to technology and AI, you've got to get them addicted to it. Stage one, get them addicted to holdables, technology they hold, and start them as young as possible.
50% of teens report that they feel addicted to their cell phones.
There's nothing to do without a phone.
I know, or like an iPad to like watch TV or something, but I can't read for like 5 hours straight.
I know. Reading's boring, I'm not reading.
This is the first study that shows a direct link between screen time and mental health. Researchers note that rates of anxiety and depression in young people have actually risen over 70%.
They call it digital heroin because it becomes an addiction, because the electronic stimulus and the digital stimulus becomes an addiction to the brain just like a drug does. That's why they put them down and they have to pick them up again.
The frenzy does not seem to die down, but that's what Apple is hoping. With higher than ever stakes for your smartphone dollar, here's ABC's Lindsay Janis.
Out of control lines, people waiting hours, even days. Apple fans across America don't appear to be losing any enthusiasm over the iPhone. Things in LA even turning violent. Check out this brawl that broke out after one man discovered someone had been paying homeless people to hold places in line.
After the holdables, wearables. You want to get in the body, so now the next stage is to get on the body. This is your Google Glass and your Apple Watch and your Bluetooth. And then, finally, implantables. Get inside the body. Gotcha.
The latest office innovation is a microchip implanted in the skin.
This is the first American company to ever try this.
So what are they tracking, and would you say yes if your boss asked you to do the same?
Turns out one of the biggest discoveries is actually this tiny. See how small that is? This little chip may be the next big thing, and it sounds like it's right from a sci-fi movie, but people all over the world are implanting these into their wrists.
Once you know the outcome, you can see the journey. And in terms of the ultimate endgame, which is to attach the human mind, the human brain, to AI, so that AI, artificial intelligence, becomes the human mind, and the human mind as we know it is no more, you can see the progression there of the stepping stones. And this is why we are at the cusp of a massive choice that humanity has. Because if we go on down this road for not much longer, I mean, some of these major players in Silicon Valley, like Google's Ray Kurzweil, they're talking about this AI brain connection happening around 2030 onwards.
And let me summarize it for you. Now, today, I mean, you have a computer in your phone, but if you need 10,000 computers for a few seconds to do a complex search, you can access that for a second or two in the cloud. In the 2030s, you need some extra neocortex. You'll be able to connect to that in the cloud directly from your brain. And so over the next few decades, we're going to do it again. We're going to again expand our neocortex, only this time it won't be limited by a fixed architecture of enclosure. It'll be expanded without limit. That additional quantity will again be the enabling factor for another qualitative leap in culture and technology. Thank you very much.
The sales pitch of connecting the human brain to technology is it will make us superhuman. Oh, that would be great. But actually, even though they're that close to it, they still haven't seen it. They're still looking at dots and not seeing the picture. This is where it's all going. And we are sitting now in the epicenter of it, in front of a nondescript building that seems to just be a search engine. Oh, Google, let's Google this, Google that. But actually, we're sitting at the epicenter of human control. What does the Pentagon and the intelligence agency complex want? It wants control of every bit of data it controls from the population. Silicon Valley gives it them. It wants to dictate what people see and don't see. Silicon Valley increasingly gives it to them. And it wants an AI-controlled human race, and through Silicon Valley and its corporations, that is what is being developed. Pentagon Inc. These are masquerading as private companies. They are Pentagon fronts. That's why they do what they do. You know, these organizations like DARPA and the CIA, they have their technological arms which seed fund corporations and technology that have a means of serving their agenda. And the CIA organization is called InQtel or IQT, which has seed-funded these organizations. You know Siri, this Apple Office Assistant, and this Office Assistant technology, people have them all in their homes now. God knows why. It was seed-funded by DARPA, the same organization that creates genetic extinction technologies and death rays. It takes a renegade mind that looks at it in a different way, and especially an outside mind that's not in it, to see the blatantly obvious. If we don't see the picture, then the future for humanity is very unpleasant indeed. If we do see the picture and head it off, then we can start to build a world worth living in. People have reminded me over the years of that famous quote by Gandhi, which said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. I went through the period of ridicule. I went through the period of being ignored. I went through the period of being laughed at in the street. And now it's completely changed. Instead of being laughed at in the street around the world, I'm stopped in the street to talk seriously about the information. Instead of wondering where the next audience is coming from, as I used to say, I could have spoken in a phone box for many years and there'd still be room. The interest is fantastic.
People are just waking up, which is amazing. And I think it's becoming more obvious now. I think as the agenda is obviously going nearer and nearer and nearer to the end goal, it's just opening itself up and it's becoming more and more obvious. That's encouraging massively.
People aren't buying it anymore. They're not buying the official explanation of everything.
And just more and more people are mistrusting of their mainstream media sources and their politicians and so on, because they've been given so many examples over the years that they can't be trusted.
I feel the genie's out of the bottle and it's not going back. We had a tax imposed in the 1980s by Margaret Thatcher called the poll tax. It was a desperately unjust tax, and large numbers of people simply refused to pay the tax. What happened? They had to change the tax and drop it. Not only that, it was the start of the end for Margaret Thatcher, who was perceived as the Iron Lady and who was impregnable. And all people have done is say, no, not doing it. Someone comes out of Downing Street, someone comes out of the White House. They say, we've had a meeting, and this is what's going to happen. What if enough people say, we're not doing it? We're not doing it. Where is their power? There is none. The power of the few is in the acquiescence of the many. And if we stop acquiescing with our own enslavement, we cannot be enslaved. We are at a fork in the road. If we go on as we are, we'll live in a fascistic Orwellian global state within decades. And I'm being seriously optimistic when I say decades. If we take our power back and we start questioning and we stop fighting among ourselves, then 7.5 billion people can't be controlled by a handful. If the 7.5 billion, A, know what's going on, and B, won't have it. My whole life has been synchronistic when I look back, amazing coincidences leading me in certain directions. But since I had my mind explosion in 1991, the synchronicity have been unbelievable. And here we are, we're filming about, my life, which is about defending and expanding freedom. We've come onto the pier where I stood as a kid watching steam trains go past. And there's some kids here on the beach, and look what they're writing in the sand.
Freedom!
Freedom!
It's freedom!
I get emotional with it. Because of what's happening in the world compared with what could be happening. The enslavement that could be freedom, the illness that could be health. That's what drives me on, knowing what it could be. I can see it, traveling around the world and seeing people awakening, seeing through the bullshit, seeing through the hoax, seeing through the manipulation, which is what is holding us in servitude. And the kind of people that are seeing it, former system people who you never think would see it, young people are seeing it, people in their latter years are seeing it. There's something happening. There's something happening. And this is just something simple like this. It's just so freaking symbolic of where we are going. And we must not stop until it happens. I mean, what kind of world are those kids going to live in if we go on as we are? But we're not going to. Much as that will distress those that wish it to happen. Good. There is an end game, and it's here. That drives me on. That gets me up in the morning every day to go on pounding this out. It's what gets me, on planes all the time, going around the world talking. And if you look at the history of the world, it's renegades, by that definition, that are the only people that have ever changed anything. Martin Luther King was a renegade. Gandhi was a renegade. Over and over again, across all the institutions, you've had medical renegades and scientific renegades, political renegades, and they're always the ones that change anything. Why? Because they're challenging the status quo. It's the only way we're going to change anything. The world needs renegades, and it needs them now, and it needs them fast.